When the general looked across the battlefield, he recognized the shield first and the face second. His own brother was standing on the other side, and neither of them had any intention of stopping.
That is only one of 7 times a warrior found themselves fighting the very people they were supposed to protect. A quick note before we start. Family conflict tends to get dramatized in the retelling, sometimes by the participants themselves for political reasons. Where the record is uncertain, I'll say so. The documented cases need no help sounding brutal.
Number 7. Julius Caesar and Pompey. Before either man became a legend, they were allies and, briefly, family, since Pompey had married Caesar's daughter Julia to help cement their political partnership. Julia's death in childbirth in 54 BC removed the personal bond holding their alliance together at exactly the moment their political rivalry was accelerating. By 49 BC, the Roman Senate had aligned itself with Pompey against Caesar's growing power, and Caesar crossed the Rubicon River with his army rather than disbanded as ordered, effectively declaring civil war against the government and the man who had once been his son-in-law. The two former allies spent the next several years commanding opposing Roman armies against each other across the Mediterranean, culminating in the Battle of Pharsalus in 48 BC, where Caesar's smaller, more experienced force decisively defeated Pompey's larger army. Pompey fled to Egypt, seeking refuge, where local officials, hoping to curry favor with the apparent winner, had him assassinated the moment he stepped ashore. Caesar reportedly wept upon being presented with his former son-in-law's severed head, which is either genuine grief or excellent political theater, and historians still argue about which. Number 6. The Sons of Kublai Khan. The Mongol Empire's expansion often gets remembered as one unstoppable machine, but the succession disputes within it were frequently just as brutal as anything fought against outside enemies. After Kublai Khan's death in 1294, the vast Mongol territories had already fractured into competing khanates, and members of the same Genghisid family line fought each other for territory and legitimacy for decades. One of the more direct family conflicts involved Kublai's own cousin, Kaidu, who spent much of his life waging open war against Kublai's authority over the Mongol Empire's core territories, refusing to recognize Kublai's claim to the title of Great Khan. The two men were separated by only one generation of shared ancestry, and their forces clashed repeatedly across Central Asia for over 20 years without Kublai ever fully subduing him. Kaidu died in 1301, still in open rebellion, having spent essentially his entire adult life fighting a member of his own extended family over who had the right to rule an empire neither of them could fully control anyway. Number 5. The Battle of Kappel. During the Protestant Reformation in 16th century Switzerland, religious divisions cut straight through Swiss cantons that had previously fought side by side as allies. In 1531, Protestant reformer Huldrych Zwingli led forces from Zurich against Catholic cantons in what became the Second Battle of Kappel, a conflict that split communities and, in some documented cases, individual families along religious rather than territorial lines. Brothers who had grown up in the same household found themselves conscripted into opposing militias based purely on which canton's religious policy they happened to live under. Zwingli himself marched with the Zurich forces as a chaplain and was killed in the battle, his body reportedly mutilated afterward by Catholic soldiers who considered him a heretic rather than a fallen countryman. The war ended in a negotiated peace that essentially preserved the religious status quo, meaning families that had fought and lost members on opposing sides gained functionally nothing from the conflict, beyond confirming that the border between their villages was also now a border between their souls, apparently. Number 4. The Battle of Shiloh. The American Civil War produced no shortage of family tragedy, since state lines rarely aligned neatly with personal loyalty. But few documented cases are as direct as accounts from the Battle of Shiloh in April 1862. Among the war's estimated total, several verified instances exist of brothers serving on opposing sides encountering each other directly in combat, including accounts of soldiers recognizing relatives among enemy casualties on the field afterward.
Border states like Kentucky and Missouri were especially prone to splitting families down the middle, since geography did not determine political loyalty the way it did further south. One frequently cited account describes a Union soldier discovering his own brother's body among Confederate dead following the battle.
You said you'd write me after Gettysburg.
A discovery made worse by the fact that the two had reportedly exchanged letters just months earlier, hoping the war would somehow avoid bringing them into direct contact. It did not. Shiloh alone produced roughly 24,000 combined casualties over 2 days, and buried somewhere in that total are family reunions that happened only after the shooting stopped. And only because someone was walking the field afterward, looking for bodies rather than survivors. Number 3. Emperor Constantine and Licinius. Constantine and Licinius ruled as co-emperors of the Roman Empire in an uneasy political marriage, reinforced literally when Licinius married Constantine's half-sister Constantia in 313 AD to help stabilize their alliance. The peace lasted roughly a decade before the two men, each controlling half of an empire neither was willing to fully share, went to war against each other for sole control. Constantine defeated Licinius in a series of campaigns culminating in 324 AD, after which Licinius formally surrendered and was promised his life would be spared, partly due to Constantia's direct intervention and pleading on her husband's behalf to her own brother. Constantine initially honored that promise. The following year, however, he had Licinius executed anyway, on accusations of plotting a fresh rebellion, accusations historians remain divided on as genuine versus politically convenient. Constantia, having watched her brother eliminate her husband despite her intervention, reportedly retained her position at Constantine's court regardless, which says something uncomfortable about what family loyalty was actually worth at the top of the Roman political system. Number 2. The Battle of Camlan. According to Arthurian legend, King Arthur's final battle was fought not against a foreign invader, but against his own nephew, or in some versions, his own illegitimate son, Mordred, who had seized the throne during Arthur's absence and refused to relinquish it upon his return. The historical basis for Arthur himself remains genuinely disputed among scholars, with the earliest references appearing centuries after the events supposedly took place, making Camlan sit uneasily between history and legend. In the most commonly told version, Arthur and Mordred fatally wounded each other in single combat during the battle, ending both the war and both bloodlines in the same afternoon. Whether any of it happened as described is impossible to verify, but the story has persisted for well over 1,000 years, specifically because the emotional core rings true regardless of the historical details. A king destroyed, not by an external enemy, but by the person closest to his own throne.
Number 1. The Battle of Zama, or more precisely, the broader Barcid family entanglement within it. Hannibal Barca's famous campaign against Rome eventually ended at the Battle of Zama in 202 BC, where he faced the Roman general Scipio Africanus in North Africa. Less commonly discussed is that Hannibal's own brother, Mago Barca, had spent years commanding a separate Carthaginian force in a largely unsuccessful campaign in northern Italy, one that some historians argue diverted resources and attention Hannibal desperately needed during his own increasingly isolated campaign in the Italian peninsula. Mago was recalled to Carthage shortly before Zama, reportedly dying of wounds during the voyage home, meaning he never actually stood beside his brother in the empire's final decisive battle. The deeper family tragedy of the Barcid dynasty is less about brothers fighting each other directly and more about an entire family, 3 brothers total, spending nearly 2 decades attempting to hold together a war effort against Rome that eventually consumed all of them, one by one, in campaigns increasingly disconnected from each other by the empire's collapsing logistics and Rome's growing dominance. Hannibal survived Zama itself, but the family enterprise he had inherited from his father Hamilcar effectively died with Carthage's defeat, taking 2 of his brothers down with it along the way. That is the strange thing about family and war. Blood is supposed to mean loyalty, and most of the time it does, right up until an empire, a religion, a throne, or a border decides otherwise. 7 times, the person on the other end of the battlefield shared a bloodline with the person doing the fighting, and the fighting happened anyway. Every battle leaves behind a story. Every story leaves behind a lesson. Subscribe and join us for the next chapter of history.